Hey guys, so today we are talking about freedom, but full disclosure, I have been filming this video for I think an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours now, and it's probably just going to get chopped up a bunch because I am exhausted. Before I start this, I think it's important that I introduce you to somebody. His name is Drew. Now, I met him in Colorado. We traveled through Utah over to Nevada where the retreat was, and then down through southern Utah and northern Arizona, back over, and then we ended the whole thing at a music festival in Chillicothe, Illinois, and then ended up back in Michigan. I have to introduce you to him first because you're going to see a bunch of footage of him. On this trip, I started thinking a lot about freedom and what it is to be free, and for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons is Drew. Now, Drew has spent his entire life essentially being as close to free as somebody can really be in a capitalistic American society. He is very nomadic. He is a very seasonal worker. He works in Alaska at national parks, and then he goes to Moab and works there at their national park, and he travels to the jungle of Peru and serves ayahuasca, and he's kind of been very mobile, going where he wants, when he wants, making enough money, doing these seasonal jobs that he really enjoys for the most part, to kind of afford all his adventures. And I'm kind of on the path of trying to also do that. Freedom, as I was witnessing it often on these travels, is about the sovereignty over our own mind. I'm going to start with straight up definitions. That's how we're going to start this, okay? Freedom is defined as the quality or state of being free. The actual definition says such as, and then lists a bunch of political statements. But the basics is the quality or state of being free. Okay, so then I looked up what does the word free means. According to the dictionary, free is either not costing or charging anything, which is obviously related to money, but I think that it's actually a pretty good definition, or having the legal and political rights of a citizen. And I was like, what? Free is having the legal or political rights of a citizen. All right, cool. What is a citizen? Well, a citizen is defined as a person who legally belongs to a country and has the rights and protections of that country. But fuck you. If you belong to a country, that's not freedom. Apparently freedom is being a citizen, and being a citizen is belonging to something. So, I don't know about that. And then I started thinking about how I would define freedom. And the word that came to mind was sovereignty. So I looked that word up. And sovereignty is defined as freedom from external control. And I think that's probably the best definition, but you can't really define freedom as freedom from external control. So we're going to dig into a little bit deeper, but we're going to use it as a starting point. However, in order to do that, I need to define a couple of more words for you. The first word that we're going to define real quick is indoctrination. Indoctrination is the process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. And the second word we're going to define here is propaganda. Propaganda is defined as information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a publicized or particular political cause or point of view. I have a podcast, and on that podcast, I made a video about information. And this is something I feel really passionate about. In that podcast, I explain, and I forget the number now, how many people own all of the media that you're consuming. And I believe it was under 20. It was in the teens. I forget exactly how many. But in that podcast, I said a party bus of dudes control all of the information that you consume. And that's true. And the thing about it is since you were a child, you have been indoctrinated, right? You've been given a set of information that you're supposed to accept uncritically. This has been happening all throughout school, which every child is legally required. You can homeschool, but they still have to pass standardized testing. And not only are they given a specific set of information, which is very biased, which is by definition, biased information for a particular political point of view is by default, by definition, it's propaganda. Not only that, but they are taught how to exist in our society, how to gradually go through a series of consuming set information given to you by an authority figure and then regurgitating it back outwards in order to be rewarded to continue onwards, that you can then be told that you have to go to college, to get in debt, to get a job, to work 9 to 5 your whole life miserably so that you can feed a system that doesn't support your actual growth and evolution and ascension, okay? That's the baseline that we're operating in, okay? And I think most people agree these days that the media is not an unbiased place of information. Most people understand that which news channel you're watching is going to feed you a particular point of view. They also generally understand that all news is biased to some extent. Most people understand that politicians are by default untrustworthy, they're liars, they're manipulative, that the system is against you. There's an entire movement to defund the police these days. Everyone seems to understand the basic concept that the system that's operating is that we're having to be forcefully lived in, which, by the way, not freedom. That system is inherently flawed and at best flawed, and most likely is mischievous and malevolent. Now, what's wild to me is that these days, everyone has turned against one another. And there is a pro this and anti that for literally every ideology. And we've decided that we can deem a person's worth based on which ideology they seem to be assimilating towards. If it's our ideology, then that is a smart and good person. But if it's somebody else's ideology, then that is a stupid, terrible human being. And that's how we're existing. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up in terms of freedom is because sovereignty, freedom from external forces, freedom from external control, should extend to the sovereignty over your own mind. And the problem is, if you are given a specific set of information, propaganda, and then indoctrinated with it, then you are being forced to adhere to a specific reality, and that is not freedom from external control. Your views and opinions of the world and the way you see it shapes the reality you live in. And I mean that in a way, on a depth and a level that I don't think most people understand. When I say it shapes your reality, I literally mean the way that you interact with the entirety of the universe and how it interacts with you and what you are even fucking capable of is entirely dependent upon your view of reality. It's how powerful your consciousness is dependent upon how powerful you believe it is, first of all, and how connected you are to divine truth. And when you are consuming a preset of propaganda and bullshit hand-delivered to you by a very clearly manipulative powerhouse of centralized control, then you are not being given the sovereignty to view the world without that filter. And I know you're thinking right now, that doesn't extend to this, or that. Yes, the fuck it does. Yes, it does. And the fact of the matter is, the information that you've consumed about that, whichever side of the fence you happen to be on, the information that you have consumed about that, has it come from mainstream media? And when in the history of ever has that been a reliable source of information? Like, ever. And that goes for both sides, because I know that there is right people on the, and I don't mean right as in correct, I mean right wing versus left wing, because everything is a duality of division these days. The people on the right have their own propaganda and indoctrination in regards to how they think and feel about this particular situation. And the ones on the left also have their own propaganda and indoctrination. And the bitch of it is both sides have been indoctrinated since birth in how they formulated the reality leading up to this point. There is so There's no freedom here. That's not freedom. In order to be sovereign, you have to have sovereignty over your own mind. You have to have the ability to make your own thoughts, decisions, and opinions, to obtain your own information, but the entire system is bent against you. And I'm going to go a little bit further here to state that the entirety of the internet, all over social media, is also heavily censored. And if you don't already know that, I would suggest you look into it, because it's actually really terrifying. At the core of all my tangents, here's the important part. When you think about the world in terms of large, cosmic, energetic forces, when you think about it in terms of a war of consciousness and a spiritual existence, a multidimensional existence, you have to realize that there are really vast forces that are of like a negative polarity, and there are equally vast forces of a positive polarity. I don't even like the terms positive and negative, but for the sake of conveying the idea. Anything that is intended to control you or keep you from being free, which includes freedom of your ability to think for yourself and to draw your own conclusions, that is going to disseminate from a cosmic force of a negative polarity. You, at some point, need to understand that freedom, true freedom, is a state that you're supposed to exist in. Freedom is the ability to be, just be, to just be. And a lot of that is your responsibility. You're responsible for checking in with yourself and handling your own shadows and demons and these kinds of things, which additionally block your perception from being objective. Like, you already have your own ingrained biases based on the traumas that you experienced as a child. The indoctrination that has occurred is not as simple as political indoctrination. It's also the indoctrination of your childhood, of your parents, of your family, of your social circle, of your friends. Every little layer and level of existence in this world is in some way influencing or indoctrinating you to some capacity or another, and how to see and understand the world. Freedom, which I definitely have not achieved, is the freedom to exist without all these external influences over the sovereignty of your own mind. To be able to say, no, hold on, let me see what I feel about that. Let me see how I think about that. Let me tap into myself and see if that feels true to me. Because you're going to be bombarded with a lot of false truths. You're going to be bombarded with a lot of indoctrination and propaganda. There is so much. I mean, literally, if you turn on your TV, you open Facebook, you start scrolling, it's propaganda. It's all propaganda. It's all slanted for a corporate or political agenda to some capacity or another. I understand the irony of me being on YouTube and making this statement. The answer is always going to be love and understanding. And that's really the core of my message. Like, no matter which side of which fence of which anti-pro this or that you're on, the answer to everything is always going to be love and compassion. And if the result and the conclusion that you're not coming to isn't love and compassion, then your reality is being swayed. If any issue that you're looking at doesn't persuade you in some level to become more compassionate or to exhibit love in some way, then you're being swayed. Because truth, freedom is love, and love is freedom, and that's the existence to just be. And if you are not capable of doing that, you're being swayed and you're being influenced. And this is where I like the first definition of free. The first definition of free, which was obviously intended to be in regards to money, is not costing or charging anything. If the reality that you are playing in is costing you or charging you in some way, then it is taking away from your freedom. That's not freedom. You're free when you can live your life in the way that flows naturally for you. We all have this kind of divine path. We all have this natural inspiration. We all feel inclined to go somewhere or do something, or we have a particular specialty towards a topic or a skill set. We should be allowed and have the ability to explore that infinitely to our heart's content so that we can fully manifest our fullest selves, so that we can be our greatest selves. I think a measurement of how free you are is how able you are to become your biggest, best self. If you are impeded in any capacity from being that, even if it's from your own mind, then you're being negatively influenced, externally controlled, and your freedom has been taken away from you.